Now, our next thing is we've got 3 young entrepreneurial growers, and I'd like to call them up if they'd come up. We've got Chris Schruers from Schruers and Sons with the celery. We've got Kees Versberg, who's with the Sales Development Manager with Qualpack. He's there, up the back. And we've got Michael Verassi. So you guys like to come up and we'll have a QA question session with these 3 guys. They're all in different businesses, but they're all... Oh, how about you pull a seat up, eh? Sit up the front, just grab one of the seats over there. And I'd just like to ask these young guys about their experience in some of the things they've had and whether what we've heard today has been as relevant as I think it was. If you just want to talk about your business to start with and where you're up to, and then we can ask the audience to ask a few questions and what hurdles you had to jump over in your business.
Is that working?
Yep.
My name is Kees. I am the Sales and Marketing Manager at Qualpack. It's a 4th-generation farming family, Australian-owned, operating out of the Lockyer Valley in Queensland. Been with Qualpack now about 6 years. Started into the export business about 4 or 5 years ago, dealing more directly with customers overseas. There's various presentations made this morning that just make sense to me why we export. I think one of the things that hit me is that there's not a lot of growth achievable in Australia for our business. And even the growers that I represent, their common line is if we want to grow our business, the chances of success in the domestic market is going to be less than overseas. I think the hurdles that we have seen in the export market and will continue to see is it's targeting the right market, targeting the right customers. How close can you get to the consumer? How do you tweak your product in such a way that you're creating a demand? Our business, our farms produce mainly broccoli, pumpkins and onions. We have not ventured into any value-adding services. It's very hard when you start traveling countries overseas in the Asian market that you're dealing with countries where the cost of production is sometimes 30-40% of the Australian cost of production. Value adding is a great way of setting your product apart, but I've seen potential projects happening and will going to happen in the next few years in having the value adding actually being done in Asia itself, where they can do it for half, if not less, than we can do it in Australia. The biggest risk you also take with value adding is, depending on the countries you export to, is access with your product to those countries. I'm talking about a simple scenario. If you package all your product perfectly well, and it gets overseas and they pick up an insect and it's got to be fumigated, you've got to pay for someone to unpack a whole container with packaged product. Unless you're going to be very smart and there is rulings how much openings you need in each package and each box to get fumigation gases in there. Singapore, easy market, you can put a dead cat in a box and they'll still accept it. You go to Japan and Taiwan and you've got to be really on your toes as to what you're going to send them and be assured there's not an insect in it. They sometimes tend to, decline your whole shipment if they find a dead insect there, because if there's a dead insect, more than likely somewhere in that container there's a live insect. I'll just pass it on, and if there's any questions later on, let me know.
I'm Michael Verratti from DSA Fresh. We grow about 80 different product SKUs. And can you hear me okay? Yeah. Our focus is on value-added vegetable production. I'm very new to the export game, so we've dabbled and made a fair few mistakes in the past. We've got a longer-term strategy that we're using to get into export with direct channels, but at the moment we're just paying through an importer. The reason we've gone through an importer is because at the moment we've learned from our mistakes and just realised that we're not resourced to go directly into the market. It's very resource intensive to develop those direct relationships initially, and we feel that we need someone on the ground over there. That's why we haven't gone down that path. So at the moment we're using an importer.
My name's Chris from Schruers and Sons. We've been in the celery game for 53 years now, And we first tried exporting in the 90s and it didn't really work out for us. And then probably 3 or 4 years ago, we decided to go back into export. Our main driver for that was, 2 drivers, was that the first one we saw a oversupply in the Australian market with celery coming on. And with the position we were in, with having to move farms and everything like that, we needed to diversify our risk in our portfolio. So we saw export as that way of diversifying our risk. Secondly is that I used to live in Asia, and I thought it was a great idea to keep my travelling up to go over there. I saw a gap in the market when I was over there. So there's a lot of American celery coming in, but it was all looking the same. It was always looking very tired and old. And I thought with Australian produce, we can get it there quicker, we can get it there smarter, and we can certainly still be price competitive with the quality that we could supply. And so we did that, and we actually started working with What Export initially to do that, to see how it went, and that was a successful partnership, and it still is a successful partnership. But also gave us the confidence to do it on our own to other areas such as Malaysia, Hong Kong, and in Dubai as well. So in 3 years, we were able to expand our business by about 20%, and export's taken up about 15 to 20% of our business now, which has been great for us. Some of the challenges and are understanding obviously your customers in different areas. So Japan, I don't think we've nailed that one yet. We've still got a lot of things we need to do and work on, particularly in the value-added area. But I think some of that work we're concentrating on for Japan could actually filtrate out to the Australian market as well at some point in time. Because I think there is some cross-pollination of what you can do and how you present it as well. We initially went out and targeted a niche market, so a high-value market, mainly because we knew from a price point of view we needed to target the high end, and that gave us a really good foundation to leverage on the other areas of growth in Malaysia as well. That's it from me for the moment. Some questions? Anyone?
Yeah. Anyone got any questions for these boys? I mean, they've been there and done it. And we started off today, I asked the question, why would you export? And I think we've had a lot of the questions answered, or some of the pitfalls answered today, and some of the hoops and hurdles you may have to go through. But now's the time to ask your question.
Directed to Chris. Obviously, my question is, did you come across any scenarios where you just felt it was too hard, or there was consignments that were either rejected, or how did you go about getting on top of that?
I guess I'll take you back to the first meeting I had with the guys in Singapore. I was with the Watts, and I think we went to about 3 or 4 different people, and each of them said, "Oh, you can't compete against American celery." So you felt like walking out of these meetings going quite deflated, really. And it was this perseverance. I said, well, we have to come up with a really good story behind what we're trying to do, and that's what we did. We brought them onto a bit of a customer journey. So we changed our mindset and really focused what was discussed today about focusing on the customer, focusing on where your product was coming from and how you grew it and why you grew it and why you wanted to expand your business out in Asia and what value we're going to give to your customers at the end of the day. And like Martin said, it's not always about driving a special in price, it's about what value added can you do on top of that. Whether it's going over there and meeting your client's client, so to speak, and meeting with your customers and understanding what they want and what they like and what they don't like. So we did all that, and it seemed to have worked.
So look, I don't know much about celery, other than
That's good.
in the domestic market, that it's packaged in a box and sent to market like a lot of other products. So how did you send it over to overseas?
We changed the way we packaged it. we developed a system internally to manage that process, because it's a totally different process. We invested in that, and we're still trying to invest to improve how we package it and how we present it. In a way, it had to be presented a similar way to American celery had to be, because that's what they were used to. That's what the sizing and stuff that they like over there. So we had to look at growing, supplying smaller sized bundles as well, bunches, as well as the larger ones too, which our market dominantly is larger produce. So, the Singaporeans like the smaller ones, Japan some of them like the bigger ones, Dubai like the bigger ones. So it's a real combination of what it is.
So are they flow wrapped or are they packaged in
Both.
a different way?
Both. So a lot of it we sleeve, depending on which market, and others we flow wrap, and we do the pre-packs as well. Yeah. So, and it's also your brand as well. You've got to invest in your brand and the way you present your brand too. So it's got to be eye-catching as well. It's got to be different. So I don't know if anyone knows our brand, but we've got a girl on our box that was pretty much half naked when we took her over. We redressed her up and we presented that in the Asian market. And in Malaysia, some clients like her, the other clients don't. So we've got different packaging for different audiences. And that helps us too, to be flexible in our packaging and flexible in our branding as well.
So some of your packaging, she's still naked, or is that packaging?
She's not naked, no, definitely not. But it's been an icon for our business domestically. Doesn't necessarily it's going to be an icon globally. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. That's right.
Yep.
That's great.
Michael, I was just wondering, how did you choose your import?
We're still going through the process, so we're just kind of developing relationships at the moment. There's one that we've developed which has been working quite well at the moment. It's been gradual growth. For me, I'm very much a relationship type person, so just getting to know someone and then seeing their capacities afterwards. We're pretty strict in who we work with as well, as to how they represent our brand. So brand awareness is really important to us, because that's something we're really trying to develop in our range. So there was a few key criteria. Was number one, relationship. Number two, how they treated our brand, which was probably the most important thing, as well as the payment terms and all those things that went through.
Just on that, I think relationships in what we do is extremely important. I know the supermarket chains here now don't really value relationships, but in Asia they do, and it's vital that you maintain those relationships in that, and that's how we've grown our businesses, through our relationships a lot.
Everyone knows now how to export.
Got any other questions, folks? Yep, one of you. Got a mic?
In terms of your returns on broccoli, compared to what you get in Australia for it, compared to that to what you get in the overseas markets, is there a big difference? Does it depend on the time of the year, or how do you find that?
It's a massive difference, and not so much into net profit and earnings, but not being subjected to the volatile domestic market. All stable. Like we've decided, even my growers are saying to me, why do we want to export broccoli to Japan? Why do we want to pay $6,000 a container and take a risk? I guess it's the same question can be asked, why are we risking to sending 2 pallets to Woolworths in Adelaide, which is 2-3 days on the truck, and take the risk of a rejection and bring it all back? Financially, the risk is smaller, but the bottom line is in export, if you don't take the risk, you never know. And yes, we failed a few of the first shipments, temperature related, learning. Like if there's one thing that is very hard to find in any country, besides good old Google, is how you transport product overseas in a container and what temperatures you got to maintain. So you're learning from experience, but it's also when you talk to your customers overseas, with the right customers, they will tell you. Japan is a growing market for us. It's a market that can't even satisfy their needs. Their self-sufficiency in food production is only 30%. Australia is 170%, 173 I think, the latest statistics. So it made sense for us, 3-4 years ago to decide, listen, this is a market with 120 million people with a 35-40% self-sufficiency rate, so why shouldn't we export to Japan? Japan was also opened up, purely because of a visit over there and talking to importers. Coming back on a few previous comments as well, like my approach was a little bit different to the export market, is that when the conversation in the first 5 minutes is about price, I know I'm not talking to the right customer. Because we can't compete. Bottom line is in Australia, you look at countries like Taiwan, Singapore, to a certain degree, I think. In Singapore, we still have a lot of expats, so that drives the Australian market as well. You go to Taiwan and Japan, and everything is like, can you match the price from Mexico? Can you match the price from South America? Can you match the price from the US? And regretfully, I have to say, in the first 5 minutes, I can't. And if that's the way the conversation is going to go, we are both wasting our time. So I've actually took the other way around. I did not look at what the products looked like from overseas. I said, what does our product look different like? Where do I see a difference in our head of broccoli compared to a domestic broccoli in Japan or an imported broccoli from the US and Mexico? My customer initially said, send me the same stuff that the Americans are doing, the same count, the same size. And I said to the customer, there's no point. One, you're going to pay a higher price for my product. It's going to be on the shelf, and the consumer, who is the person who's going to drive our business, is not going to see the difference. Branding, we're not really into the branding thing yet. Broccoli and onions and pumpkins, all that stuff, you don't see a lot of value adding in that industry yet, long term maybe. So what do you need to do to have a product, an onion, a carrot, a pumpkin, or a broccoli on the shelf look different than imported stuff? It's got to look different, and lucky Australian broccoli does look a bit different. It's a bit plumper, it's a bit thicker. For years, Australian growers have been focusing on varieties where we get the weight, because in Australia we are very used to pay by the weight at the cashier in the supermarket. In Japan, you buy by the piece. So there was the point of difference. Suddenly I had a head of broccoli that was designed for the Australian market to be heavy, to increase the yields of the growers, but it looked bigger and thicker when it gets into the Japanese shelf, and it stands out from the Mexican and US broccoli. So my customer, in relationship with the supermarket chain, decided domestic broccoli is always higher value. Australian broccoli is one tier below. Imported US and Mexican is in the bottom. So there I had a spot in the supermarket shelf that made me look different. Coming back to your question, it is risky, export. So putting someone on the moon. A lot of stuff is risky, and I took a gamble, and it paid off. And I guess when you start in exporting, you got to persist. And I understand your point of view as well. People are held back because you're sending it overseas. Is the customer going to pay? Is it going to arrive in good condition? And there's a lot of risk involved. But my trip to Japan 4 years ago, from the 20 importers, only one of them said to me, I don't want your stuff to look the same. And my message if I would say what the key of success of our export business is, deal with the right customers. And they're hard to find. But once you got one, your business will grow with them.
Right. Any further questions while you're thinking about things like that? It is risky, and it does take a lot of effort. I mean, I've sent containers to Japan too with broccoli, but we could never do 40 footers. We never had the volume. We just do a 20 footer, which makes it less economic. But we had a few tricks in that, like Ciro came and helped us out, and you cut the broccoli in the afternoon, not early in the morning, because the sugar contents are higher in the afternoon. We left the leaf on it because we de-leafed it the next morning when it was cold out of the cool room, because it doesn't bleed the sap out of those nodes where you break the leaf off in the field when it's hot, like in the morning. And that gave us an extra 6 or 7 days shelf life. And that was our point of difference. We had a broccoli that lasted longer.
You're making a good other point as well. My biggest struggle with export is that I can't keep up with demand.
Yeah.
And I've been talking to growers for years, you know, like, and I think the scenario was mentioned earlier today as well, like, you know, the northern growers in Queensland finding some symmetry with growers in Tasmania and Victoria to do that year-round supply. And that's where we as growers in Australia is going to let ourselves down as well, because when the Chinese market will open one day for vegetables, you're talking to a potential importer there, and then you tell them, like, oh, I might be able to do an air freight shipment a week or a fortnight, and the guys will walk away because they're looking at 20 containers a week. And no one is geared up in Australia to do those volumes. The opportunities are there, but we are not organized in the industry to tackle that together. And my biggest fear is that in 10, 15 years' time, when we pick up the export market, and we're becoming more export focused like the New Zealanders are, the smaller growers will disappear, the bigger growers get the blame, because the smaller growers don't want to unite or cooperatively start exporting. The biggest success stories in the US in exporting is cooperative exporting, to get the numbers.
I think David this morning had a good point there where he said you need a grower in Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria to give you an extended time chain of harvest. I mean, to do that, you've got to have some sort of cooperative or commit 10 or 15% of your farm to that export group.
Yeah.
And then come the end of the season, pro rata out the dollars.
There's nothing worse for an overseas buyer to talk 6 months to a Queensland grower, and then got to talk for 6 months to a Tasmanian grower, and then switch again after that to the grower in Queensland.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing worse for overseas buyers that become more and more efficient by talking to 15 different growers in Australia. And they're running out of time. They you know, those guys, Japan is all corporate. It's a bit different maybe in Singapore, but they're massive importers, and they want to talk to 1 or 2 growers and supply the package.
That's what happened to us in Dubai. You know, we were quite fortunate that there was a supermarket there that was only stocking American celery, and within, I don't know, 3 months, they were only stocking our celery. So they only wanted to deal with one grower, not multiple growers. And we've got the same situation as you now, where we're just, we can't grow enough to export.
And you can't find growers to help you to assist you either.
It's hard, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
But you know, you know, I guess taking some of the domestic market salary away from the domestic market's left a little bit of a hole as well. And I guess the salary line has actually grown with the value-added packs that are there now. So the demand's much greater. So it's good for us.
Similar to your business, our business, you've got the customer, you've got the demand, you've got the inquiries, and if I can give a message to growers that are too scared to export, but wouldn't mind getting the produce overseas, you know, potentially to reduce the supply in the domestic market and assist their domestic farm gate prices that potentially could be improved upon, talk to the guys that have been successful in exporting, talk to your like-minded growers, and, you know, find an opportunity to work together, right on the back of another grower's success. And as a small grower, you don't, you know, there's not, like, even I offer to the local growers, I'll pay the growers. I don't ask my local growers to supply produce and chase the payment from overseas. I will stand for paying, you know, I will technically pay the growers in Australia. So for those, and then when the time comes that the smaller growers are getting more professional in the exporting side of themselves, it's up to them to decide if they want to go on their own, or if they're happy with the farm gate prices they're getting from an experienced grower exporter, get on board and work together.
Sorry, we've got one up here.
So when you were saying before you're struggling to get growers to support or to supply, what do you find is the main challenges? Is it just because they are scared of export, or is it what's the main issues?
Regretfully, and it's just a gut feeling, see, my approach to other growers is always, I always ask the grower what they need farm gate to be long-term sustainable. I will never tell a grower what I'm going to pay them, because I believe a grower nowadays, you know, especially the younger generations, we should know nowadays what it costs to grow something. So what do we need as a grower farm gate that we can commit to for whatever, 3, 4, 5, 6 months period of our season? You know, what would I be happy with? If the grower is telling me on the telephone, like, I'll call you back, I'll see what the market agent what it's worth, you know, I'm more than likely to deal with a grower that doesn't know the cost of production. And if a grower starts supplying and then suddenly get the phone call from the grower, the market jumped this morning to $40 a box, can you pay me more? I don't think I'll be dealing with a grower that thinks long term. The growers that I work for took a long time for them to understand that the export market is a sustainable, long-term, profitable business. But you got to be in there week in, week out, and you can't just say to your customer overseas, like, oh, sorry, the domestic market jumped up this morning, can you pay me more? You know, because that buyer also expects you to call 3 weeks later when the market crashed and technically selling the broccoli free of charge overseas. You know, you can't have, what's the saying, you can't have your cake and whatever it is.
Eat it too.
Correct. So there are opportunities out there, and I think, you know, an opportunity is there for growers to work together and get something going together. Like you said before, like what is the biggest resistance? Like regretfully, I come across growers that don't feel like they want to contribute to the success of Qualipack because they think Qualipack is going to benefit out of this. They're going to make the money with my product. If I'm the grower on the other end, I'm saying, like, if I'm getting a profitable price farm gate, why would I worry? Who cares who buys? Yeah, who cares who buys your product farm gate? You know, if it's profitable for you day in, day out. You know, you can technically go to the bank and say, listen, I got my produce sold for the next 6 months. You know, and your chances of getting a loan that you might be seeking is higher, you know, than otherwise, than dealing with a domestic market that's very volatile.
Tell me, any one of you can answer this, but probably the biggest fear of anyone getting into export is the fear of having a poor outcome. Once you've been there for a while, they'll probably forgive you. Have any of you had that phone call to say that outcome is very poor?
My growers are actually impressed that my customers overseas are better payers than the domestic payers.
No, just for the quality outturn, because
Quality
something went
was?
wrong in the system.
Or quality of product. It happens. You know, there are scenarios that your temperature in your container wasn't controlled correctly, or something happened. That's why you use temperature loggers in the container. You do your pre-quality assessment before you load. Again, it's also about dealing with the right customer. You will have a customer on the other end who find 10 boxes in the shipment all rotten and claim the whole container. You got good customers that say, listen, I picked out the 10 boxes, I can't sell them. Can you credit me the 10 boxes and the rest I'll sell?
Good, yeah, that's the sort of thing. Yep. That's the big worry that people have, that there's the email comes that outcome was poor.
Know your customer and find the customer that wants to build a business with you for the next 10, 20 years.
That's the whole thing about relationships.
Yep.
Well, we also did a lot of research on the shipping lines too.
Yep.
So we interviewed quite a number of them over a short period of time and really understood how they operated from a logistics point of view. as
See,
well.
one of the Australians' big problem is that most of those markets are on the other side of the line, which is the equator. Like that, the Americans can ship it to Asia without having to cross the equator. I mean, they have ships now that sail up through the Aleutians without refrigeration, with the doors open because it's minus 35, and then sail flat out 4 days down the Russian coast of Japan. And they can do that without having reefers. They can do that in dry boxes, particularly in things like apples, when I was there, you know. So they have a few advantages on that freight issue that we don't. Whereas in the Cox recorders, and you probably noticed it too, they record the day and night temperature when you go across the equator, the rise, as the sun comes in between the boxes, you know, as you go across, and the heat differential goes up 1 or 2 degrees there for a few hours while you go over the equator on the graph.
Yeah.
And they're all issues. I mean, reefers are getting better, but you know, that's the other thing. If you want to get your vegetables stacked on a ship, make sure it's 2 in and 2 down.
Yeah.
Might take a little bit longer to load, but at least it's got a couple of boxes above and below to insulate it from the direct heat if something goes wrong.
And I guess technology has changed as well. Like last year, December, it's also, so we use a lot of resources available to us, like Department of Agriculture and Fishery in Queensland. We've only recently in December sent a 20-foot container of zucchinis to Japan. Unheard of in the world. You know, why would you send zucchinis overseas on a 14-day trip? But using the right technology, you know, like we're playing around with MAP, modified atmosphere packaging technology, you know, we've proved that we can do it. You know, there's still a lot of issues to be solved, but the initial results of the project was positive. And I think we've got to learn also to think outside the box. You know, like the technology has changed over the last 10, 15 years as well.
Right, yeah, okay.
Question, just something that might benefit the group. We are in the asparagus business, so you know the season is not 12 months; it's a 4 or 5 month season. And What we find with the asparagus is that export certainly complements the business. You know, you might not always achieve the money that you might achieve domestically, but sometimes you achieve more. But it's not about, you know, just chasing the highest market all the time. It's about trying to move all your stock. And often it is moving sizes that doesn't sell well in the domestic market, but people are craving for it. And so in that way, it does complement business. So I think in terms of exporting, if one look at it like that, we need to try and find out for whatever product you've got, you know, how you can use what you've got and go and market it in those different markets where people may actually want your product, and maybe in this situation here, maybe they don't want it in Australia.
Yeah, because, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because as a grower, you know, the thing you're worried about is, you know, like, yes, I supply to the supermarket, yes, I supply to the domestic market, this is their specs. Oh my God, you know, I've got 20% of product that's out of spec. You know, and then you find a market overseas, for them it's a premium. And then you have an opportunity, asparagus to Japan is a good example, like they like the big, thick asparagus. And we see a similar scenario with broccoli. You know, the domestic market likes to get to the higher scale, the 130, 140 mil. The Asian market likes a little bit the smaller scale. And for a grower nowadays, it's all about, you know, all of crop, you know, approach. Who, you know, you're going in a paddock. Australians are very good in producing what they produce today. The cost of production itself, the growing of things in Australia is not that expensive anymore. The moment you start sending a person in the paddock, that's when your costs are going to be rising. And you know, if you start picking product that's out of spec for the domestic market, and it is in the bin, and it is in the shed, and it is in your cold room, you know, you're paying an electricity bill for that to keep that product cold, you know, so where are you going to send it to?
Yeah. Asparagus is consumed as a juice in Korea, asparagus juice. They crush it and squeeze the juice out of it. Be all right for your seconds. I don't think I could drink it, but they do. It's quite, yeah, I mean, look, we only know what you know, and that's one of the real big issues. I mean, you know, changing your pack, changing your product specs, changing anything, change it might become a market. Who knows?
Well, we're even looking at exploring production of vegetables in Australia that no one has ever grown in Australia, but they want overseas because they're used to getting it from other countries, but they want to have it because it's grown in Australia.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
There's a lot of Chinese vegetables that are being exported around in Asia, but people are looking at, the Japanese are a good example, like they don't want to buy fresh vegetables from China because there's too much MRL issues and too many chemical scares. But there's a lot of lines that they like, but you know, they can't grow themselves, and they're looking at growers in Australia. You know, if you can grow this on a contract basis, the domestic market wouldn't even know what it is. And the Japanese are willing to pay a premium because you actually can grow it in fertile soils in Australia.
Further questions? One more question? Anyone there? Yeah, right, please.
I'm just interested in the thought of the export cooperatives. I'm just wondering, what are the barriers, cultural, strategic, geographic, I don't know, that would be preventing the formation of more export cooperatives?
Growers aren't broke enough yet to collaboratively work together. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you only had a percentage of your crop, right? I think it could start and actually work. You know, 3 or 4 growers in each area put in 5 or 10% of their crop into an export hub or a group, just to get that long chain. And that, look, I've been a group grower for Simplot for 50 years next year, right? And I'm one of 22 growers who supply them. But we all work together. We don't see Simplot as one market. We just supply them. And it doesn't matter whether you supply, you know, 50 tonne or 2,000 tonne. But we just see that we're a supplier into that market at that price. And it works really well. And not only that, I'll say what that's really neat that we do, is that 5% of the value of your crop is retained, right? And if anyone loses their crop, you're paid out of that pool. So what you have is income security. If there's no claim on the pool, you get your 5% value back. So I'm quite happy to put $15,000 to $20,000 a year into that pool because I know the other 21 growers are looking after me if I've got a hailstorm. So I mean, we do it as what we call a cooperative support scheme. And I know I'm getting off the track, but it's a real good way of actually having income security. We all commit to it. If there's no claim, you get your money back. It's a year-to-year basis, so if you don't grow next year, you're not in the pool. And we don't have to pay any taxes like being an insurance. It's a cooperative compensation pool that we run. So, yeah,
One more point on that, there's a couple of grant programs from the federal government and the Victorian government at the moment to assist these sort of programs. They're going to set up.
yeah. Okay, right. Any further questions? Do we come to an important part of the day?
Let's go to the pub.
No, it's not. It's the award for Grower of the Year, Exporter of the Year, sorry. Yeah. We've got our NAB representative here. That's what I want, yep. Now, the nominees for the 2017 NAB Agribusiness Exporter of the Year are Harvest Moon from Tasmania, Sumich from Western Australia, Schrewer and Sons from Victoria, West Australian Corn Growers from Western Australia, and Dicky Bill Australia from Queensland. And do you want to announce the winner? You don't know the winner? I do. Right. And the winner for the 2017 Agribusiness Exporter of the Year, sponsored by NAB, is Sumich. So, can you come up, Nick? Vince and Tanner come up. Oops. Have we got a slide on that? Go and press the button. Which way do I go? Where are we? Whoops, that didn't do it. Hey? Ah, that's what I'm looking for. Right?
Put it over the wall and take it home.
Right. There we go. Well done. Do you want to say a few words? You've been in the business for 50 years.
Yeah, just on behalf of my family, I'd like to thank AUSVEG for the invite today. Michael, who we hosted the other day on the Reverse Trade Mission over in WA, he did a farm tour, and all the other exporters up there, because I know some of them, and they're all good people, and they add a lot of value to our industry, I think, across the board. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done. Now, there's one more thing to do today before you get out that door. There's an assessment sheet on every page, on every seat there. I want you to fill it out, because this sponsorship, or this running of this today, on this symposium, is actually part of the levy money funded by HAI today. So fill that in, please, and hand it in, or leave it on the seat as you go. I'd preferably hand it in to the girls at the back. Thank you, one and all. Have a good conference.